right. It's spinning. It'll be here in a second.
Thanks for doing this, and thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. It's Brandon. It's 4 o'clock on Friday, June 5th, and we are live in Living Life 2.0. And we're hoping that you can join us and share with us a little bit today as well. I see I got a couple people jumping on already, which is awesome. While you're jumping in, do us a favor, let us know who you are and where you are. I'll be able to share that information with our guest, Russ, here, and let's have some fun talking about money. So everybody, I would like to introduce you to Mr. Russ Crosson from the Ron Blue Trust. But before I do a more formal introduction, we're going to play his song. Oops, then it held up on me. Well, we're not going to wait for that. Everybody, this is Russ Crosson with the Ron Blue Trust. He is a 5-time author, books in leadership, books in relationship, and most importantly today, books on money. He's the author of Your Money Made Simple, which we're going to talk about today. And he's also the author of A Life Well Spent, which we're going to reference today. Russ, welcome to Living Life 2.0.
Brandon, great to be here. Thank you.
Hey, we really appreciate you coming. And I see that Kim is on here joining us already from Southern California, which is fantastic. And a few others will be joining. Russ, I asked you to come on. You and I've had conversations, and my company does serves the Ron Blue Trust, which has been fantastic. But in the process of that, Chris Allen from Ron Blue gave me your 2 books that we're talking about today. And I thought they were fantastic. And I really just wanted to bring you on to talk about, our wealth, our money, our giving, and how is that important to anybody looking to live a 2.0 or upgraded life?
Well, I love this whole concept of living life 2.0, Brandon. That's why, we really resonated when we talked, because I've been doing this for 40 years and we work in, obviously we're a trust company, work in the wealth management space. And what I began to see early on in the 80s and early 90s is that it's all your perspective on money. And what I began to realize is I'd see people not living balanced lives and rushing through their life to amass financial capital and not investing in spiritual and social capital. And they'd have huge estates, but they wouldn't know their family, or they wouldn't know their kids or their marriages. And so that's why I wrote Your Life Well Spent. Your Life Well Spent is basically a context book. And the punchline of Your Life Well Spent is you don't manage your money to have more money. You manage your money to have more life. Julie and I realized early on that if we spent less than we made and we lived on a budget and we just steadily plodded along, we would have options. And we'll talk about financial freedom here in a minute. But I think the context for life, and that's why I love this idea. I mean, I don't see money. We all have to deal with money. We have to buy kids braces, and we have to do this, and we have to buy groceries and pay utilities. And so money sits in the middle of trying to balance life and not get to the end of your life and have any regrets. And so I like to say that a life well spent is a life that earns and uses money to buy time, to impact people, to be productive and effective in society. It's a life that focuses on the eternal and then run with the temporal. So I think when you're talking about fitness, I mean, if you're having to rush off to work early in the morning because you have these bills to pay and don't have any financial margin, it's tough to do all the other things, right? Right. Fitness, being involved in your community, having a balanced life. And so this is my life message, really, this idea that you deal with your money not to have a bigger pile of money, you deal with your money to have more life. And I think that's what Your Life Well Spent's about. That's just kind of it's a book that's been out since 1994. It's 26 years old, and we still get a lot of traction from that thinking.
So Russ, 40 years in the industry talking about money, about wealth management, wealth creation, saving, spending. What are the biggest challenges that you've seen people have, and how are the best ways to overcome those?
Okay, well, you just set me up for what we're talking about here. Your Money Made Simple, okay? So the reason I wrote this book Brandon, is because it's this very simple how-to book. And there's a diagram in the book. See it right there? You
Yep.
maybe see it. I can see it.
I can see it.
The point is, so basically the key to financial freedom, you see the tagline, the key to financial freedom.
Right.
And the way you're free financially, and I use freedom intentionally. I didn't say financial success, financial independence, because I can't guarantee those things. But I can help you be financially free. And free is to have options. You're talking about living a life that's fulfilling and all that. Well, you want freedom and options. So the one key to financial freedom is to spend less than you make. So if you look at that diagram in the book, you have your income, and you only have 5 things you can do with it. You can spend it to live, you can give, you pay your taxes, you pay your debt, and what's left over is savings. And as long as this savings box is positive, in other words, living, giving, taxes, and debt are less than your income, positive savings, you're on your way to financial freedom. Biggest mistake people make, they don't know if this box is positive or not.
Right.
Okay. They don't know. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book, is to help people understand what goes in all these boxes to make sure that my income is greater than those 4 outflows. And if it is, whether you save $10 a year or $10,000 a year or $100,000 a year, as long as it's positive, you're on your way to a good destination. But you said, what's the biggest mistake? Most people have no idea. And let me tell you what the first mistake they make. I'll say, how much do you make? And they'll give me their take home. So the first mistake people make is they deal with their take home, not their gross income. And their gross income is what they make. All that stuff being withheld from your paycheck is your money. It may be a medical expense or a medical insurance premium, or maybe an HSA contribution. It may be a 401k contribution. It's your taxes being withheld. See, all of those things being withheld from your paycheck really go in another box. So the first thing people have to do is get their arms around, what's my real income? It's gross. And then those other items, your tax withholdings, your HSA, which is a living expense, that's a medical expense. Your 401k is a savings. And so, Brandon, I've done this for a long time, and unfortunately in our society today, the defaults are retirement. But there are people funding retirement that really haven't, since they haven't done the right process that we talk about in this book, they're borrowing to fund their retirement, but they don't know it.
What do you mean by that?
Well, what I mean by that is, if you do the 5 uses of money, they don't have a positive savings, okay? And the reason I know that is, since they're just dealing with their take home, they'll say, I don't have enough money. So for example, I met with a young couple and they said, we got to sell our house, because I said, well, how much do you make? He said, I make $69,000. Well, that was his take home. And so on the $69,000 take home, he was struggling to have any savings. He was struggling to have any margin, okay? But as we unpacked it, guess what? He had a $5,000 tax refund that was coming. So he had overfunded that box, and he was putting $5,000 into a Roth IRA. So he really had $10,000 of savings, but he didn't feel like it because it was in other boxes. And his real income was $83,000. It wasn't $69,000. But if I don't have a savings, let's take that guy, and let's say that I don't have any savings, and he's contributing to his 401k, then where's that money going to come from? He has to borrow it. And the reason I know they're borrowing is they aren't paying off their credit card debt. They aren't paying down their cars. So one way most people don't know, they're funding their retirement because they think that's the all-American thing to do, but then their credit card debt doesn't go down.
Right.
Their card payments don't go down. So they're really borrowing to fund their retirement. That's what I mean by that.
Yeah. One of the things that we've shared with our kids over the years is that interest is real, and you're either paying it or you're earning it, and there's really nothing in between. What's your take on that with people's wealth?
Well, let me, if you're listening to this and you can write this down, or I'm just going to give you a little illustration that'll hopefully help you understand why debt is so onerous and the interest you pay on it. So let's say, for example, that you don't do what's in here and you overspend $80 a month. And that's $1,000 a year. So that doesn't seem bad, right? So you overspend $1,000 a year, and you do that for 10 years. So you owe $10,000 on credit cards. And let's assume that the interest, as Brandon's talking about, is 10%. So now you decide, gosh, I got to get rid of this debt. And so here's the question: how much do I have to reduce my lifestyle to pay off that debt if I start paying it off at $1,000 a year principal? Well, the answer most people give is $2,000. You might be thinking $2,000, right? I got to pay $1,000 of interest. I got to pay $1,000 of principal. That's not the right answer. I have to quit overspending $1,000. So it's 3 times as hard to get out as it was to get in. And so, Brandon, I think we should have a healthy fear of debt, because that interest, you have to pay that. You have to pay the principal. And for the privilege of overspending $80 a month, which didn't seem bad, 10 years in, I got to underspend $240 a month to pay it off.
Yeah.
And so I think, and that's the most important thing to understand, is that, and of those 5 uses of money we talk about, living, giving, taxes, and debt. Let's talk about these a minute. 3 of those are non-negotiable. I have to pay my taxes. You can try not to pay them, see what happens. I need to make my minimum debt payments. And as a believer, I should be giving to acknowledge God's ownership. So those aren't optional. The only 2 that are optional are living and how much I save. But the minute I get rid of all that consumer debt, the minute that's gone, now I've only got 2 things that I have to do: give and pay my taxes. I just get rid of that box.
Right.
And so that's why getting rid of credit card debt, student loan debt, all those kind of things are so important, to have a freeing experience in your financial life. And remember, the reason you're doing this is to have more freedom in your life, to do the things we're talking about here, and to live a life that really matters. I mean, a life of significance. And so, I was glad to learn this, because I work with a lot of wealthy people. And I told Julie, I said, hey, this isn't complicated. It's not easy to do, but it's not complicated.
Yeah.
If we spend less than we make and we do it for a long time, we're going to be okay.
Simple as that.
Simple. That's why the book says simple, and a lot of pictures and not very many words. So a lot of people like that.
Yeah. Well, when I was given the book, I initially kind of sitting there in the Ron Blue office, I opened it up and I started flipping through it, and I noticed that with all the pictures, I'm like, I think this is a book that I can give my kids, that they'll actually, be able to go through it and not go, oh, another book Dad gave us.
Yeah. Well, that was designed for that, Brandon, and it was designed to take what we've learned over 40 years and try to reduce it down to a very simple formula. But let me just make a couple other comments. That you said, what are some of the mistakes and what people need to do? Well, fundamentally, you need to make sure that you're spending less than you make. And the first thing is make sure you know your gross income, what that is, and make sure all those outflows are less than that. So then you have savings, okay? So the mistake people make with their savings when they have extra every year is they default to putting it into retirement. It's just the default.
Right.
When they should be accumulating some cash for emergency funds, to pay for the next car, things like that. So personal investing, just having cash, they should be paying down debt. That's another use of savings, is paying off debt. Like I said, get rid of those consumer debts and things. Then they could even give more. That's another option. Maybe you're not tithing like you want, and you want to do that as part of your life, living life 2.0. It's the upgrade you want to do. You want to get from a 2% gift to a 10%. Well, you do that. And the 5th place, there's only 5 things you can do with savings. You can put it in retirement, personally invest it, pay off debt. You can give some more. But the other one is invest in your family. That's a posterity investment. That's what this book, Your Life Well Spent, talked about. That was, and I didn't understand this when I started in the business. I was like every other person, just put your money in stocks and bonds and retirement plans and IRAs and things like that. But I thought, wait a minute, I can invest in my kids. I can invest in my marriage. And that's really an investment, not just an expense. So that'd be the other thing, is to think differently. And one other thing on that, the only way you'll think differently, and this would be an upgrade on your life. Okay, let me just talk about this a minute. In today's society, since the Social Security Act of 1933, there's been such an emphasis on retirement. So we're rushing through our lives in a hurry to quit. And that just exacerbates a whole lot of things. How can I live a upgraded life when, man, I got to educate the kids. I got to hurry up and get a retirement plan funded. I've got to, and I would just say, if you'll extend your time horizon, okay, and not be in such a hurry to quit, it'll help you have a more balanced life in the process. I mean, I'm a financial guy, and there was years I did not find my retirement. You say, wait a minute, are you a dummy? Don't you know about compounding? Hey, I understand about compound, but I also understand about living life. Okay. And so, I'm 67 now almost, and I don't have any regrets that I paid off debt. I enjoyed the trip. So I would just say, Brand, that's the other thing. Retirement has exacerbated the pace of life for people. And I know people say, Russ, you're a financial guy. I don't understand what you're saying about retirement. I'm just saying that if you plan to work your entire lifetime, which is biblical, you can change what you're doing. I don't care, but just be careful not to increase the pace of your life by putting this hurry to quit on top of everything else you've got.
Yeah. You know what I really appreciate you saying that too is in our group and what my passion has been is really helping people identify that God-given purpose and passion inside of them, to discover it and then trust to go live in it. And I just believe there's too many people that have jobs they don't like, and you talk about they're working hard to retire. But they're not enjoying the process. They don't like the job they're in, but they think, I couldn't make more money doing something else. And I think it's a big mindset shift that every day should be enjoyable. We were designed to be full by our creator, and finding work that's fulfilling and exciting and fills up your tank is so much more valuable than money that can come and go, as we've just noticed in the current 90 days.
Well, but let's talk about that a minute. You're talking about freedom. So let me tell you a story. So I had a client in the mid 80s, right, an attorney, and he came to us and we did a plan, and God was calling him back to what you said, calling him to be a judge, right? But he couldn't afford to take the pay cut to be a judge because he got his lifestyle up and all that. But he chose to listen to us, and over the next 10 years, he resisted the urge to go buy a bigger house like all these partners did. He got rid of his debt. He handled his finances in such a way that 10 years later, 1995, God called him to do something else, and he was able to be obedient. So
Wow.
to your point, the other reason you manage your money is remember, freedom is options. So I don't want to be on this treadmill. Julie and I always set our lifestyle and tried to make decisions so we could live on about half what we were making. And this was true all the way along, so that I could do something different. My income could go down, whatever. And so I think, Brandon, your point there, if you're really trying to live a life that's, if you're in a job just to make the income because you got a big house mortgage payment, that's no fun.
Yeah.
So the way to counteract that is say, okay, to the best of my ability, I'm going to make myself some margin here. And then I have options. If God calls me to do something else or take a pay cut or some of our clients, once they understood this, like doctors, for example, would go to 4 days a week or 3 days a week. They'd realize, wait a minute, I can still work 5 days and be worth X when I'm 65, or I can, I see how this works. I can stay in this house and work 4 days a week.
Yeah.
And so those are the kind of decisions. We were talking about how does money impact living a full life. Mm-hmm. All these decisions. That's why money, you have to deal with it. None of us get away from having to deal with money.
Right. I like that story that you gave with the doctor working 4 days versus 5 days, because I think a lot of times when people look at money, it's a very analytical thing, but really money's emotional. Our wealth is emotional, and we don't always admit it, but money's emotional. And that story you gave is a great emotional appeal to people to understand the freedom that well-managed money can give them in their lives. How many people, if you asked them if you were in a position to work 4 days a week instead of 5 days a week, would you do it? I think 100% of people would raise their hand and say, absolutely.
But there's 3 reasons they don't do it. Okay, and this is how we have to think correctly about money. And so the first thing is we've bought this lie that money and all the stuff it buys is a measure of our self-worth. And so we get our net worth and our financial worth tied in with our self-worth. And so the reason I work 5 days a week is that I got to stay in that bigger house, or I want to buy a bigger house because I'm trying to stack up with everybody around me. Yeah. Let me just make a comment about that. I have a principle called the principle of limited sphere. And that's the idea that if you make it your goal just to amass financial capital, big house, nice place on the hill, whatever, how many people will ever know what you have financially? My wife and I used to take the kids and go to Kansas on vacation. I know many of you probably haven't vacationed in Kansas, but That's where we were from. So we'd drive back there. But we get on these 2-lane roads and we'd drive through these little towns, and you see the person that had the big house, and then you get smaller houses and then double wide trailers, right? 40 miles down the road, guess what? Same thing, big house. So what I began to realize was the guy in the one town doesn't know the guy in the other town. So it is with you. See, if you're out of balance working the 5 days rather than the 3 days, just so you can keep up. That's one reason people do it. So money is not a measure of your self-worth. We're worth an incredible amount of who we are in Christ, regardless of what we make. The second reason people overwork is they think if I just made a little more, I'd be content. That's a lie too. We need to learn to be content with what we make. Philippians talks about that. But then the real big one is we think that money is a measure of success. And so we use the word, hey, he has a successful business. She has a successful, fill in the blank, because it's always around the monetary trappings. If you read Joshua 1:8, it says you're successful if you do what's written in God's word, which is, man, if you love your wives as Christ loved the church, you're successful. If you raise your children, and you walk by the way and rise up and lie down, you're successful. If you work heartily for your employer, you're successful. So I used to read that verse and think like everybody, success equal money. But no, if I do what the Bible says, now I can be successful and have money, but I can be successful and not have money. So my challenge to you is the next time you hear the word success come across your lips, I bet you used it in the context of something financial. Have you used it around the UPS guy that came to your house lately, or the butcher at your grocery store, or the checkout person at the grocery store? No, we don't use success with things that don't have the monetary trappings. And because of that, Brandon, we're caught up in this, I just got to keep working because I want to be a success. And we don't stop and think, wait a minute. I'm working hard. I'm loving my family. I'm training my kids. And, I may one day have money, but that's not the measure. And so I think, to your point, we're scared to not only work 4 days or 3 days, because I guess I can make a lot more if I work more, but we need to think correctly.
Well, I don't know if you've seen anything, read anything in our group about my personal story, but you kind of described it right there. And that's where I got to a point of knowing and learning that I had to start working on Brandon 2.0. And, before I was 40, I had sold 3 companies, and we had put a lot away, and we had the big fancy house, and we had good relationships as well. But we hit a really, really big wall called the recession in 2009, and we lost a ton. And what I learned in that time is, as much as I thought I loved God, and I thought I knew God loved me, and I had this life of going to church, and I even said, and this is it's really interesting for me, but I used to say, hey, look, money's just money. Money's just money. But I tell you what, when I started losing it, I realized that it was much more than just money to me. And hitting that wall and seeing my own response to it, and the way that it really blew up my internal life, was a big wake-up call for me, that I needed to find my identity in something other than my success, because it blew up in about 90 days. And a big chunk of it was gone because we invested in real estate, and we owned a company that was serving the real estate community. And we were just in a really, really bad season for our lives. So your story and what you said, and how people lose their identity or think of it in money, not in terms of other things, guilty as charged. And that was a catalyst that God used in my life to help me understand my true identity in him. So I appreciate you sharing that story.
Well, Brandon, thanks for what you learned. And I would just say to folks listening that, what Brandon said is true. He learned it. He's a testimony of that. But I started in this business when I was 26 years old. So I was very fortunate to get started early and work with a lot of, quote, worldly successful people, because they had money and big businesses and nice homes and all that. But I began to realize that, if you miss some of the other important things, the relational things, right, if you make that your focus, that's why I just got through speaking with 14 new interns in our company. And they said, man, nobody ever told us this stuff, like, extend your time horizon, don't be in a hurry to quit, do what you enjoy doing. Don't just get out to take the job with the biggest money. They're like, none of our professors told us that. And that's the thing. We should not be surprised that God's ways are not the world's ways. And so if you're listening to me and you're thinking, God, this guy's nuts, never heard this before, you might want to just stop, because Isaiah 55 says that God's way is not the world's way. So if it sounds opposite, well, maybe like Brandon said, it really is something you should take to heart. And don't let me, even though the word is simple on this book, it's not easy. Okay. I mean, it's not easy to do, because everybody around you is doing the American thing, just got to get ahead, run faster, make more. And you're going to look a little different, but you won't regret it. I can honestly tell you that. Julie and I never regretted just steadily plodding, spending less than we made. I was a school teacher, and Ron said he'd pay me what I made teaching. And that was before I could say, Ron, that's over 9 months. So I took a pay cut. It's pretty hard to do from teaching. But when I came to work for the company, I got paid what I was paid over 9 months, over now 12 months. So that would be like a pay cut. But, we just committed to do these principles. And here's the thing about these principles: they always work, they're always relevant, and they're always right. And the choice you and I have is, are we going to apply them? And it takes courage to do that. And courage is defined as resoluteness of mind and firmness of thinking. And I just think that you won't regret it. And I don't go back and say, well, gosh, what if I wouldn't have paid off my dad? What if I would have had more if I'd put more in the market? I don't know. I enjoyed the trip. I think that's the operative word: enjoy the trip. Brandon's enjoying the trip now, and he's impacting others to think life, about how to live life, and help your kids. I don't know how old you are if you're listening to this, but help your kids get on a good path. I was really glad to talk to these interns. They're all just graduating from college or in their junior year, and if they can get off on the right foot. But like they said this is totally opposite of what my professor said. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, well, you have to decide what you want to do.
You have to remind me when those internship applications come out next year. I got a lot of kids coming up that I think would benefit a lot from the Ron Blue method of financial planning. So
well, they really thanked us for the input we've gotten over the last few days, which was really encouraging. But it was funny. Somebody sent me a video I did back in 1990. So think about that. This is a video from 30 years ago. With overheads and overhead projectors and slides and things like that. But I had to laugh, because other than having brown hair and no glasses, I was saying the same stuff, but it still works, right? So
hey, that's the sign of a great message, right? It's one that stands the test of time, and it's still totally relevant and applicable.
Well, that's because God's word doesn't change, Brandon, and all these principles are based on God's word. It says the borrower becomes the lender's slave, so you'd be in the process of getting out of debt. It says steady plodding brings prosperity, so you diversify your investments. And see, we've been all freaked out the last 3 months, but the Bible already told us this was going to happen. It says, don't put your hope in the uncertainty of wealth. It said right there, it's going to be uncertain in 1 Timothy 6. And it also says in Ecclesiastes, you do not know what misfortune is going to occur upon the earth. And so a pandemic, COVID-19, you know what's going to happen. So you do your part. And I think, God's word is true. And I think the challenge in the money area, like I went to my dermatologist, right? Okay. And so I had melanoma scare 3 years ago. And so I went for this full body check, and my wife and I go in every year and get those. And so I said, hey, just pay attention to what you're doing, and then we can talk about it. Because she already asked me if she should invest in the market. I said, hey, why don't you just make sure you're checking everything out, and then we can talk. So we get done. She goes, well, should I put money in the market? Because I'm down about 20% now. This is like toward the end of March.
Yeah.
I go, well, let me ask you, have you paid off your house? So, oh, no, my advisor said I need a deduction, and she can make more for me in the market. And I looked at her, because I've heard this for 40 years. I go, so you're not paying off your house, so they make more in the market. And I said, let me ask you a question. She told me she had a beach house, it's debt free. I said, would you go borrow money on that debt free house and put it in the market? Oh, no, I wouldn't do that. See, so isn't that interesting? So the point is, this thinking is so opposite of what, so for somebody to say you need a deduction, I told her, I says, give me your money. I won't give it back. You can write it off as a bad debt. You get a deduction. You'll be happy. I mean, this idea of having to have a deduction doesn't make any sense, because, you pay $1 of interest, the government gives you back 30 cents, but you're still out 70.
Right.
If I don't pay it, back to your point on the interest, Brandon, if I don't pay out the $1 of interest, I still got 70 cents. I pay the government their 30. So would you rather have 70 cents or 30 cents? But, it's just, the dermatologist was just a classic case of what I've seen over 40 years. We just are so mixed up on this.
Yeah.
And and so it's like, you never regret paying off your debt, including your home over time. So
Yeah.
that's the punchline there it's not all American. It's okay. You can be an American and still pay off your mortgage. I know people think you got to have a mortgage, but it's okay to pay it off.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Russ, I'm very grateful and appreciative of you joining us on Living Life 2.0 and sharing your wisdom and your 40-year history with talking about money and wealth and planning and saving. And we're going to put in the links, a link to both of your books. But is there anything else you'd want to end with sharing with people before we sign off? And how would people be able to connect with you if they wanted to reach out?
Well, they can obviously get a hold of us at ronblue.com, catch up with our company, and the books are a good resource for you. But Brandon, would just really encourage you, wherever you are in your sojourn. Brandon kind of explained, he went through some things and learned some stuff. If you want to really live a life well spent, and you want to have freedom, and you want to have fulfillment, you got to deal with this temporal thing called money. And you have a choice. You either do what the world's doing, which is, run fast, build big piles, try to quit early, or you say, wait a minute, I'm just going to steadily plod along here. I'm going to spend less than I make. I'm going to enjoy the trip. And I think that's my operative word is you can enjoy the trip, Brandon. And I think my encouragement to people is that's why this book was written in the way it was written, is so you could actually put your numbers in there. And by the time you're done, you should have your plan done. And I would just encourage you to do that, and maybe get a group of people to help hold you accountable to do that. And it is opposite of what most people are doing. Just like these interns said, they're like, man, we never heard this. Well, yeah, I can just tell you it works. It's worked for Julie and I. Like I said, I'm a little older now, and we don't regret applying these, but we did enjoy the trip. And you can too. And let's say you're in your 50s or 60s and you haven't done this, well, then start where you are. Yeah. You always start where you are by spending less than you make and then paying off your debt or whatever. And I think that's the biggest thing, Brandon, is, it's not complicated, but it will take some courage to stand up and do it. But you won't regret it. And I think that's the thing, is you can enjoy life as you go along. And if you're living life 1.0 now, the way to live life 2.0 is, let me say one thing, since I'm going to say this, do your plan. Let me say one other thing about budgeting. The other thing I've learned is that most people have this great intention. Russ, this is great. I'm going to do a budget. Let me give you the key to budgeting. It's in the book. Most people quit their budget in February because they start January and they go, I'm going to do a budget this year. And the reason they give up in February is because they budget everything monthly. You have to do your plan annually. Okay. You have to think over the whole year. So for example, you budget $100 a month for clothes and $100 a month for vacation, and $100 a month for gifts, and $100 a month for car repair and all that. So your car breaks down in January, the kids get sick, you have a nice clothing sale, and you say it doesn't work because you only have $100 in there. But no, if you budgeted $1,200 for the year and you think about it non-monthly, then you could spend $300 on clothes, $300 on vacation, $300 on car repair, $300 on, a vacation with your wife in February, and still be on your budget. Still have $900 left in all those categories if your budget was $100 a month. So here's the key. Budgets only work if you segment monthly from non-monthly, and you have to have cash in the system to make it work. No budget works paycheck to paycheck. So let me just encourage you with that one of the reasons to have savings is to make a budget work, and we talk about that in the book. But I think, Brandon, many people have good intentions. They set a New Year's resolution. They start in January, but they quit in February. And we've had many people tell us, guys, that was revolutionary when I realized I should budget some things annually, think about them on an annual basis. So, but they have to have cash to spend $300 in January, right? You have to have a little cushion in there to prime the pump.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense too. I think it's consistent with what we know about the difference between growth orientation and goal orientation. Goals are great, but the challenge is if you don't hit a goal, the mental side of it can destroy the long term. When you have more of a growth orientation, a longer term commitment to whatever it may be, you can, have mistakes, you can have hiccups and still stay on course to meet your overall life goals. So I
Well,
appreciate that.
so what you're saying about money then is you got to think about it annually. Think about your plan that you're spending less than you make over the year. And
Right.
then the months will work themselves out. But I think most people live monthly. They live paycheck to paycheck.
Right.
And you really don't, you never live life 2.0 on paycheck to paycheck. I'm just telling you that. You've got to get off of that to get some freedom. And to me, so how do you do that? Well, maybe you don't fund your retirement for a few months to accumulate some cash to get started. I mean, there's things you can do, but you may have to make some hard choices, but it's worth it.
And I think the freedom you gave in sharing with people the upside downside of not funding your retirement. I mean, it's a total mindset that starts with, I got to fund it so I can quit. If you just change the mindset of, I'm going to enjoy the journey, then you're not as stressed to fund it. And if you're not as stressed to fund it, then you can make better decisions month to month, year to year with your money that's going to help you day to day, instead of just, hey, how big is my nest egg that I put away? So
Yep, I tell you, that's a huge one, Brandon. I talk about that a lot in the book, the whole retirement thing, but that's been indoctrinated into us. My son calls me from college and said, "Hey, Dad, I need to do a Roth IRA. My professor told me to do a Roth IRA." And I'm going, "You're not even out of college yet. Come on, you got to buy a house and all that." So it's like, and I'm not anti-retirement. I mean, like I tell people in the book, if you have enough savings to fund equal to the match, you need to do that. But if you don't, do these other things. I mean, you need to have some money in the bank to make your budget work.
Absolutely. Well, Russ, thank you so much for being with us on Living Life 2.0. I really appreciate it. And for everybody out there, you can reach Russ and his company at ronblue.com. And we'll put links down in the comments for links to both of the books that we've referenced. And we'll even put links in there to Ron Blue, where you could actually see his whole library of books and others. So Ron Crosson, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate it. And everybody else, we look forward to seeing you on future editions of Living Life 2.0. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, Brandon.